Hello, my name is Julie Grimm, and I am the host of Love, Dating, and Relationships for Spiritual Women. I'm so excited to have you here today. A little bit about me, if you don't know me already, I'm a spiritual guide and healer in the Modern Mystery School, and I help support people on their spiritual path. I am so excited to have Nikki Rutledge here today. Nikki is the owner of Moonlight Mindfulness, which is a lot of things, primarily a store where you can buy all things magical. I know I have, including crystals and candles, but Nikki also teaches meditation and different seminars on topics like shadow work. So I am so excited to have you today, Nikki.
Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be a part of this.
Yes, 100%. So when you and I were talking about relationships and dating, you had just a lot of really wonderful things to talk about and to say, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more. You had mentioned in your own journey needing to do a lot of inner work to really set the tone for meeting your now husband, and maybe even while you're continuing to be with your husband, needing to do that ongoing healing work. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure, I feel like I could talk forever about that, but I'll try to keep it a little brief.
That's the thing about love, dating, and relationships. I feel like I can just talk about it forever. So
Yeah, so I came from a pretty broken home. I also came from an emotionally abusive relationship. And from there, and I feel like sometimes when we're in those relationships, we don't realize that we deserve better. Like we just sort of are like in this karmic loop and we're going with the flow because it's easier when we're comfortable, right? We just don't want to ruffle any feathers or step away from what we know is wrong. So, from there, I sort of started doing this work for myself. I'm now a meditation practitioner and a crystal healer. And this stuff's really helped me because gives you something to sort of believe in and something to that's like tangible that you can turn to in difficult times. So what happened was after that relationship, I sort of made myself really believe through like affirmations and through opening these gateways that I deserve better. Like I deserve a loving relationship. I don't deserve, I don't want to end up like my parents. I don't want to be in another emotionally abusive relationship. I deserve this. I'm a good person. And saying all those things outwardly, it's a little awkward at first because you're like tooting your own horn. You're like, yeah, I'm great. So you have to really like get comfortable with yourself. There's a great book. It's by Louise Hay. I don't know if you know who that is, but she's an amazing woman. She passed away, I think in 2017. I wish I had the chance to like know her, but she wrote this book about positive affirmations and what they can do for you and how they can sort of create this world for yourself. So from there, I met my now husband, and I still continue the inner work. I suffer from generalized anxiety, social anxiety. I have a bit of PTSD, but it's this journey and this process that only helps strengthen a marriage because you can't really be in a partnership that's strong and cohesive if you're sort of struggling, which we're all struggling in certain ways, but if you're at least putting the work in to sort of face those demons and face those wounds, you're really opening the gateway for a lot of love and happiness to come in, if that makes sense.
it absolutely makes sense. There is so much in what you've just said there. From positive affirmations, I know I actually do mirror work where I'll look in the mirror and tell myself I love myself. And I know, positive affirmations, I would say they're just evidence for how powerful our mind is. In the Modern Mystery School that I study in, we talk about, like, on some level, the mind is all. And because it's all, it is so powerful. And when our belief system, like you were saying, is rooted in I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy, or even like this is what a relationship is like, but it's based off of something that's highly dysfunctional and not actually something we desire for ourselves, we have to then go in and reprogram. So absolutely, like affirmations and mirror work is so powerful in that whole structure. Um, but yeah, and then also the ongoing work of being with your husband, who I'm so glad that you were able to break free of those mental traps and stories that we tell ourselves, but then needing to continue that it's an ongoing process. I know for me, I'm single, I'm dating right now. And some days I feel like, man, do I need to be perfect? Do I need to have it all one and done? Like at what point will it have been quote unquote, enough that I'll be at this level where I can really meet somebody to share a partnership with?
Yeah, I feel like there'll never be an answer to that. Like it'll never be like today's the day. Like light won't, shine down and be like, you find your mate today. Like it just, I feel like we find love when we're not really looking for it, to be honest. I didn't want to be in a relationship when I found my now husband, who was thankfully very patient with me for the first year we were together, because it was a struggle. Like I had all these wounds from being emotionally abused and just not having faith in myself anymore. Like my self-esteem was shot. Like there was so many things there at play, but he was super patient. But it is a journey though, because the thing is, no relationship's ever perfect. No human's perfect. You're not going to find your knight in shining armor. Like it doesn't work like that. How it does work is you find a best friend, a teammate, a support system. There are obviously times where my husband and I have gone through some really dark things, but the thing is, it's how you navigate through that. So if you can become each other's teammates and best friends and communicate and have that open, dialogue with each other, like, hey, this is what I need. And this is what, I feel like you're doing, or this is how I feel like you're not serving me right now. Like ways to phrase things so that you're not yelling at each other or like harping on each other. Again, though, it's life, it's messy, and there's going to be fights. You're going to bicker over the laundry and dishes and like crazy things. But if you just can remember the important stuff, that, life is short, this is your teammate and your best friend, then some of those darker moments and those little moments of bickering just sort of become lighter and easier to navigate.
Yeah, I love that. I remember an ex-boyfriend of mine who I dated the first time that we were having an argument, and he looked at me and he was like, we're on the same team, right? And nobody had ever said that to me. And it blew my mind. I was like, we're having an argument, but you're on my team. Like we're on the same team. And it was at the time, it was so revolutionary for me to have that. It felt, even at this moment of conflict that we were having, still to be so supported
Yeah.
by him. It was
Yeah.
really wonderful.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a fear of marriage. I watched, growing up, my sisters and I watched our parents ultimately destroy each other, and that's not an easy thing to experience. And in many ways, I had a huge fear of marriage. I didn't want to get married, but it was just like different. Like it was like with him, he was like, marriage is not going to be what you think it's going to be. Like we're not going to, turn on each other or whatever. And even with the wedding, like he held my hand through so much of that, and we really like, planning a wedding is one of the most stressful things ever, but we made it fun. Like we literally would go sit in a cafe and have a piece of cake while we were doing the planning, or like have a cup of tea, or like make date nights be wedding stuff. So like when we did our cake tasting, we took like a trip, like just weird ways to make it fun and, like not get bogged down by the stress.
I love that. I love that so much. And when you're talking about teams and doing the ongoing work as well, it's reminding me, on any team, you're as strong as the weakest link. And each of us, including your partner, right? But we have to look at our own stuff first and foremost. We're all going to have those weak links within our psyche, those places where our emotional armor has wounds and we get triggered or whatever it might be, and we're only as strong, and then the relationship is only as strong as those weakest areas. So absolutely continuing to shine a light on it and having that kind of courage, and also maybe humility to say, okay, I don't have it all figured out, even though I am maybe in this partnership, which in so many ways is like more than I could have thought it would be. And yet still there's stuff getting trudged up and that needs to be worked through.
Yeah, exactly. And I just, like I mentioned to you Earlier, I just finished up a shadow work workshop. It's the 3-part series to teach everyone how to begin shadow work, which is just inner work, working with those inner child wounds. And I felt like there was such a need for that because we are all dealing with things in different ways, like this pandemic, like just being home and how much our lives all changed. It's a lot, and a lot of stuff has been brought to the surface, whether it's because we had the time to sit down with those feelings or whatever happened there. But yeah, when you're in that partnership, I used to say to my husband, like, I know I suffer from anxiety and I go to therapy for it because I don't want him to take on that burden. That's not his problem. Like, he doesn't have anxiety. Yeah, he can help me through it and be supportive, but that's on me to do the work, to go to therapy or to meditate through it or to find tools to have in my toolbox so that when I'm being triggered or we're having an argument and I feel really anxious, it's just I can better serve myself and our relationship. So that's why it's so important. And again, no human's perfect, but if you're both working at it, you're putting in the effort to really like make a difference in those difficult times.
Yeah, I love that. So, amidst all of this inner child, this deep, cathartic, healing work, how do you keep the romance alive? And, and I would also say maybe, especially during the pandemic, when you're seeing your spouse, your partner, day in, day out, you're not leaving the house very much. How do you keep the romance alive?
So I will tell you something funny. The pandemic was probably the funnest time in our entire relationship. And I know that sounds crazy. And when we went away for our anniversary and we were chatting with this host at the restaurant, he's like, oh, we celebrate our 1 year back in October. And he's like, congratulations on your 1 year. Like, you didn't want to kill each other yet because you've been like trapped in the house all year. And we kind of looked at each other. And when we sat down at dinner, I said, I couldn't relate to that guy at all because he was talking about how his wife has been bugging him and that this has been a horrible experience. And my husband and I, we work very hard. We now have a small business, but before that, I was working at BU. He owns a barber shop. It's funny. I feel like sometimes we barely see each other like in normal life because he works till he's not home till like 7 or so. And life happens. So basically, what I'm trying to say is during the pandemic, we had all this newfound time together, but we didn't look at it as a bad thing. We literally took nature walks every morning. We would do some picnics some days, like during those nature walks. We started getting puzzles. We had arts and crafts nights. We started like figuring out like different movies to watch or like different things to clean. Like we were cleaning different areas of our apartment. Let me tell you, like time of my life, like both of us, he even still says he's like, it was so fun because we tried different things. So although we can't go out and have a date night, we would maybe cook a big meal and then have it like outside on the porch or something. Just trying to mix it up in everyday life. What I want to say to everybody is put in the effort, like to keep the romance alive. Like you can't just, assume that the romance is always going to stay alive because it is marriage. It does become stagnant at some points, but plan weird date nights. Like we would randomly make bets on stuff. Like I don't even know, like football games or like just crazy things, like making strange bets. And the loser would have to plan a date night, but a unique date night. So not something we've done before. So we were doing like indoor mini golf, like before the pandemic, finding new places to drive to, checking out like small towns near us, just being like creative. And even when you're staying home, have some arts and crafts nights. Try stuff you've never done before, stuff that you want to learn, but your partner can just kind of like, do it with you. You got to put in the effort and you got to kind of get creative sometimes.
I'm hearing adventure. Like in the midst of the pandemic, you had adventures. You had each of you sort of planning these new experiences to try on. I love that. And when you were talking too, I know I mentioned this off before our recording. A teacher of mine, one of my spiritual teachers, talking about relationships. And he was saying, we go to work, we get dressed up for work, we put on our makeup, we do our hair, whatever, we wear the shoes, we do our due diligence, we do the research online, whatever it might be, so that we show up, we know that we're going to do our best that day, whether it's an interview or, just a job that we really want. But then are we really doing that for our relationships? Maybe the first few dates, but it's something that needs to be ongoing. So absolutely what you were saying, putting in that work and keeping that spark alive. So
Exactly.
I
And
know, oh, what's that?
well, I was just gonna say, it doesn't even have to be about like spending money. Like when we were stuck at home for Easter, that was kind of difficult, like the beginning of the pandemic last year, because we normally would be with family. So we literally created an Easter egg hunt in our apartment for each other. Like we'd research random facts to put in the eggs. And we literally walked around our apartment and had an Easter egg hunt. Like some people might have thought we were crazy, but we had a blast. Like we just like you make it your own, and you found the right partner when you can do those things and just completely be yourself and be goofy and silly, and you're just totally accepted. So
I love that so much. Yeah. Sounds like you two are really best friends. And
yeah.
what you're saying too, to tie it in a little bit to your moonlight and mindfulness, it's about magic. Like that's what I'm hearing. It's about creating magic in the mundane and magic in the everyday and magic in your romance. And I know for me, so again, I study in a spiritual lineage. We talk about magic very practically. It's kind of funny. And that's magic with a K because it has a key. It has an actual practical application in your life. It's not just magical thinking or daydreams. But with magic, we can really transform things. And I know that that's something that you're really passionate about. So, can you kind of give listeners who are maybe looking at how they can bring in more magic into their relationship, whether they're dating or married, whatever level they might be?
Sure. So, like you mentioned, like magic in the mundane, magic is reorganizing your furniture to clean up the space, to make space for new things, dusting. I know it sounds so strange, but negative energy clings to dust. So, when we're dusting, that's magic. We're literally getting rid of all that stagnant energy to make room for new energy. In terms of, I like to do like self-care rituals for myself, but that can also be in the form of like taking a bath or taking like a long shower. I feel like sometimes magic is looked at so heavily in strange ways. Like it has this weird connotation of like the devil or witches, like with the big witch
Right,
hats on. And
right.
I never understood that, because being connected to your inner witch and being connected to magic is more about connecting with nature, the people around you, and your own needs, and how that all sort of meshes together in a harmonious way. And what I mean by that is my husband was super supportive of my spiritual journey, and he sometimes does rituals with me and other times he doesn't. But again, they don't have to be weird rituals where we're sitting there like, chanting. I mean, we can literally just have a self-care ritual and try to create abundance in our lives. Lighting some candles to set the mood is great. We love our crystals, of course. Like we sell them and I use them. I have literally my labradorite right here I use whenever I'm on video, because it's soothing. But for love, we have like rose quartz, amethyst, sodalite to really work on the throat chakra and open up that line of communication. The list goes on for crystals, but just making your home be a place that is relaxed and comfortable. And so much of that has to do with magic, because it's not just about doing the inner work, which again, we have those self-care rituals. We're going to do that magic on our own. But when you're doing the magic for your space in your home, it's almost like the air becomes lighter. It's like when you clean like an unorganized closet for the first time and you like restructure everything, you can like breathe. Like you're like, oh, okay, like everything's organized now. I hope that answers your question, because I feel like I could talk about so many different
No,
avenues.
it absolutely does. And I think, what you're shedding light on is that it doesn't have to be like hocus pocus. It's a lot about the activity, but it's also about that intention. People might already be doing these things. Hopefully they're cleaning to some extent, right? But just bring that intention, as I'm dusting, as I'm reorganizing, I am making the way for blessings. I'm clearing out old energy, or, maybe people are already taking baths, but just bringing a little bit extra attention and awareness, maybe bringing an essential oil in. And I remember in one of my first classes that was really dealing with what is magic in a very practical way. One of the teachers was saying, she's like, I'm Italian. And when I started practicing magic, I said, you know what? This is my grandma. this is what my grandma used to do. This is what my aunt used to do. So exactly what you were saying, so many of these practices, we might think, oh, is that like pagan or something like that? But they might actually be just cultural methods that we've handed down that are 100% magic. We just maybe didn't use those words, but they're, to your point, ways that older generations were connected to nature and connected to magic, which is all around us, and just started to bring those things down into traditions. Like, are you, I'm not Italian, so I can't speak to all of them, but even, sweeping with brooms, we talk about brooms and witches, but other sort of different, opening the windows to let the fresh air in each morning, different things like that.
Yeah, my maiden name was Zarella, so I'm like almost full blown Italian. But yeah, it's like all those like customs that we sort of grew up with, or like those traditions. Even cooking, though, cooking is magic. Like literally baking, cooking. I've been baking my whole life. I used to bake in college to pay for my books. I literally had a website, Nikki Cakes and Bakes. It was the thing. Don't have the patience for it now. I just do it for fun. But that in itself is magic because you're literally, think about it, you're mixing all these ingredients to create something. So, in big ways and small, I feel like magic is such a part of our lives. And again, some people maybe don't use the word magic. Maybe it's self-care, or maybe it's a day of relaxation. And what you said with the intention, that's key. So we've had a really crazy, busy, like few couple of weeks. So yesterday, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take like a super long shower. I'm going to like wash my face, like put a mask on my face. And that had put so much intention behind that. I wasn't just going through the motions of doing that. I was truly doing it because I'm like, I'm going to cleanse everything on my skin and my body and just step out of the shower and take some deep breaths. And like that in itself is magic. And then guess what? I felt great for the rest of the day. And so it's like when we're doing these things, and I know it's tough, life gets busy, but just being mindful, which is also a huge part of our small business, because that for me has been really helpful. Noticing and appreciating all that stuff branches out into our relationships. Because if we're being mindful and appreciative of what someone's doing for us and what we're doing for ourselves, it sort of like manifests in other ways.
Absolutely. I mean, that goes back again to our mind is so powerful because what we're focusing on, we're bringing light and awareness to, and we're almost amplifying that energy. So if our mind is in a negative spot, we could unwittingly, we don't want to, but if we're not paying attention, we might start to create negative magic or black magic versus, white magic would be another way to think of bringing light into something. And when you were talking about cooking, yeah, like when you're cooking, what are you doing? Most of us are cooking every day, right? I mean, to some extent, I've gotten kind of off the cooking train because I'm like, oh my gosh, if I have to wash another dish in this Groundhog's Day loop, I'm going to lose it. So I've found like the cooking hacks, but still, we're cooking every day. And how can we bring that awareness to those small actions and that intention to maybe bring a little bit of magic? Like maybe I'm preparing a romantic meal, I can bring some of that love and passion and other good juicy stuff into the actual food that I'm cooking.
Yep, exactly. And intention is so key. And I told the people that attended the last workshop of the shadow work series last night that when we do these things, and I know they're difficult to implement at first, but the more we do them, the more we're like creating space. And that space can be for someone that's looking for a partner, to have that partner come into our lives, or to create space if you're in a relationship and you really want to feel more excitement or joy, or feel like you're able to communicate better, whatever you're looking for. I feel like there's so many ways to manifest that through that magic and through doing those things on a daily basis. And it just starts by little things, again, like cooking, baths, like all that good stuff, but can really add up if you start implementing it into your daily life.
Absolutely. And that's what's so amazing too, is how these small little tweaks can sort of begin to shift bigger things in your life as well. Like, I mean, you were even talking about that inner work at the beginning of this conversation about how, I mean, that probably started with small adjustments. But now here you are having a relationship that's just so far removed from anything that you had ever known beforehand.
Yeah, and like I said, it's life. Like it's never perfect. I mean, we're not sitting here saying like it's all sprinkles and sunshine over here. Like it's you're gonna go through things that test you, things that are difficult, things that are gonna challenge you in your partnership. And but the thing is, if you have, like I always say to everyone who attends my workshops, like if you have the tools in your toolbox, what that does is give you options for how to react to those moments. So can you take a step back and be like, why am I so angry right now? Can you take a step back and be like, what am I being triggered by? What do I need? What am I not communicating? Really just having that moment to pause, because I feel like nowadays we're so reactive, and that's because of social media. Look at Amazon, we get things delivered the next day. Everything's like this. But in that partnership and within yourself, if you can just take a moment to pause and sort of think through like the pieces and take a step back, you can really better respond with, maybe a little bit more lighter or like more positive energy than just reacting negatively. And that takes time though. That's not like you're just not going to one day wake up and be able to do that. I still have to remind myself of those things most days, and especially when days get super stressful and busy. But again, it's like such a big journey, but it's so worth it to do that for yourself, because then you eventually realize like, wow, something I would have maybe exploded over this last year, but now I'm sort of just like, all right, this is happening. How can we handle it? And let's move on.
Yeah. And when you're talking to it's reminding me how it's all towards this goal, this larger overarching goal of having a life that you really desire, of creating a life that you desire. So, at any point we can choose differently. If we don't like how something happened, we can say, okay, I'm going to choose differently and reroute ourselves towards something that's more in alignment. But yeah, it's absolutely a journey. Wow. So, kind of last question as we're wrapping up. I know that you said you had a great story about how you and your husband met, and I'm a sucker for those kinds of stories. I know you already touched on you weren't really looking for anything, but could you go a little bit more into that story for us?
Yeah, so I actually shared this for the first time on social media on Valentine's Day, and everybody messaged me and they're like, what a story! Like, this is crazy. So I, in 2010, went to freshman orientation at UMass Lowell. There we were put into these groups, and my now husband, Tyler, ended up in the same group as me. We like immediately hit it off. He reminded me of a friend. He looked just like a friend that I had at the time. And so we started talking and chatting, and all of us in the group pretty much exchanged numbers. And later that day, Tyler, we were texting and we sort of became friends. And then one night, my then boyfriend and I had a huge fight. I took off. I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I can't deal with this. Tyler invited me to a party. We ended up kissing at that party.
Tyler knew. He was like, this is my shot.
Yep,
This is my opportunity. I'm gonna
exactly.
slide right in.
So
So you
we
ended up kissing that night. Okay.
yes. And then I had a friend with me at the time who like sort of spilled the beans that we kissed. I was undecided if I was going to share that because it was a 2-minute thing. It was just a kiss. But my ex, my then boyfriend, did find out. We had a huge blowout. I felt so much guilt. I felt horrible. So of course, I cut off communication with Tyler. I'm like, I don't want to talk to this person. I messed up. I feel guilty. I feel horrible. 4 years went by. 4 years. I stayed with my ex and then finally called it quits. Probably like the most difficult decision I have ever made in this life. One thing I will say on that is sometimes love is not enough. You can love someone with all your heart and soul. And if it's toxic or becomes toxic, love is not enough. You can carry love in your heart for them, send that love from afar, but please do what's best for you. I digress. But so
No,
I,
I think it's such an important message, not to derail us, but that's actually a huge motto for me. It's like, love isn't enough. I can love so many people, and exactly what you said, just sending them, but it does not mean I have to be in a relationship with them at
exactly,
all. And it
exactly.
doesn't mean I have to close my heart to them, but we don't need to be in a relationship.
Love and light from afar. And
Love it.
so, yep. So we called it quits, and then I sort of adjusted to this weirdly single life, which for most of my life I was in a relationship because I had like some codependency issues growing up. But I took a break and I was single and I had fun and life was fun. But then one day Tyler randomly like Snapchatted me, and I'm like, what is going on here? And he's like, how have you been? And he's like, I just backed up my phone and your number randomly popped up. Like he literally did not have my number, but he backed up his phone from like the cloud, and there my number appeared. And he's like, how the hell is this girl? Like, oh my God. Message
Is
me.
that true? I need
It
Tyler. I need to do
is
some investigative journalism. I think Tyler had like a little vision board. He had
maybe.
a candle and he was going to spell over like 5 years.
Maybe. Who knows? But it worked, and we went on our first date like a week later. It was probably the most epic first date ever. We like did everything. We were together from like the afternoon to like late night. We just hit it off. And like I said, I wasn't ready for a relationship. So we sort of stayed in this like dating mode for a while. But then, like a year later, I just was like, I don't want to lose you. Like, I really started to feel like he was becoming my best friend, and there was so much love there. I actually one time was at his house and like had a vision of us being married, which I know sounds crazy because I never
It
wanted to
doesn't
get
sound
married.
crazy. Another woman that we've had previously talked about how her episode is about intuition in dating, and she said on the second date she knew she had an intuitive insight. This is my husband.
Yeah, and it was just so strange. And I'm like, you know what? And at the time, my ex was not going quietly. I mean, he was like doing like laps around my neighborhood, like was texting
Okay.
me, like being kind of aggressive. And so again, Tyler had to deal with a lot in the beginning, and I was very honest with him and I was informing him of what was going on. But my heart was torn sometimes. Like I was like, should I move forward with this new life or should I be held back? And I remember my sister's mother-in-law telling me, we don't go backwards in life, Nikki. You don't go backwards. We're here to go forward. You know, you tried that. It didn't work. Where are you going? Why are you going back? So I ultimately made this like huge leap, and I don't know, then everything just sort of fell into place. And again, like it's just crazy how life works. I never would have imagined myself getting married, but here we are. And I always say to him, like, I love the life we built together. It's not always easy and it's not always perfect, but it's ours and it's beautiful and I'm very grateful for it.
What a beautiful journey. Ah, so lovely. Good thing. I mean, it's so interesting because you're actually a second person in the last week, the other woman I interviewed, talking about how her now husband was so persistent. And I think that is actually a really important trait in general. Obviously when we're persistent around something that we desire, we're much more likely to achieve it, but somehow to have persistence in dating as well. I love that. When somebody really knows what they want and they see it, that they don't give up.
Yep, there was a lot of flowers, a lot of like nice little surprises in the beginning, but I think it was almost when I was so torn and when he was like almost ready to kind of throw in the towel, like I feel like that happened at some point. That's when I really was like, okay, like I can't let this person go. Like I cannot, like everyone loved him. Like my whole family loved him. Like all the good vibes. Like everyone's like, Nikki, stop being an idiot. Like just figure it out. And I was like, all right. And I took the leap. And like I said, I thank goodness I did because it's been quite a journey, but it's been fun and exciting. And yeah, it's been great.
So beautiful. Well, it has been so lovely to have you today. I'm so grateful for you and your time, sharing your story, telling us more about the work that you do. And I know if people are curious, they want to find some of your magical candles, your crystals, they can follow the links down below to your store and to your website to learn a little bit more about you and the work that you do.
Yeah, and I was telling you earlier, we have a great date night in candle. Candles like that can really help set the mood. There's nice crystals and a lot of self-care items too. So yeah, definitely check us out, and hopefully I can meet some new folks from this because I love sharing my experiences and knowledge on all things magical and holistic. So thank you for having me on.
Lovely. Thanks, everybody.